Welcome to the Python course. This is going to be in type of one video course which is going to contain multiple videos in one video. I'm going to add chapters to this video so you can skip the parts that you don't want to listen. After this video, you are going to be able to write basic programs such as password generator or calculator using Python. You are going to have the fundamentals for moving to the other areas of Python. This course is going to be full practical and I won't use any slides in lectures. I will directly write the code and talk about how it works. Let's see our course outline. In lecture 1, we are going to talk about print, comment, and variables in Python. We are going to write our first program in this lecture. We are going to talk about why commenting is important in Python and we will discover variables. In lecture 2, we are going to talk about the data types in Python. We are going to discover the numeric and categorical data types in Python in this lecture. In lecture 3, we are going to be talking about list methods and operators. We will see some methods that we can use with lists in this lecture, and also we are going to talk about operators like arithmetic and logical operators. In lecture 4, we are going to talk about string methods and if statements. We will see some methods that we can use with strings, and we are going to talk about if statements in this lecture. In lecture 5, we are going to talk about loops and functions. We will see two types of loops in this lecture and we are going to discover the functions. In lecture 6, we are going to talk about taking a user input and random module for understanding the module logic. After this lecture, we are going to know the Python fundamentals well and we are going to be able to create programs by ourselves. That is the end point of the course. We will stop there. You can write Python code wherever you want. You can use Jupyter Notebook, VS Code, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to be using Google Colab in the lectures. For using Google Colab, you can go to Google Drive and right-click for selecting it. Before starting directly, I want to talk about the history of the Python shortly. After that, we are going to start. Python is a high-level, general-purpose programming language that was created in the late 18th by Guido van Rossum while he was working at the National Research Institute for Mathematics and Computer Science in the Netherlands. Initially designed as a scripting language to automate tedious tasks, Python gained popularity for its simple syntax, ease of use, and versatility. It has since evolved into a powerful language used in a variety of applications including web development, data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Python's open source community and large number of libraries have made it one of the popular programming languages in the world today. So once again, welcome to the course. Welcome to the Python Fundamentals section of the course. We are going to cover the basics of Python in this section. I'm going to close my microphone when I'm writing code in this section because I don't want to disturb you with the keyboard sounds, and we can start with comments and print for this lecture. In Python, if you write a normal thing like I wrote hello there, it's not going to work. We need to use specified function for it. We are going to use print. But this is not going to work also because you need to pass in string. We are going to cover what string is. We need to write it in quotes if we don't want errors. Now it works. We printed out hello and it doesn't give error. Now we are going to cover comments. When we run this, it doesn't give an error because we use the hash character at the start. So, welcome to variables lecture. Variables is a really important stuff in Python. We want to say x is equal to 10, but there's only one way to assign a variable, that is a cosine that I'm going to show. This way we assigned x as 10, and now we can print our variable. We don't need to use string or quotes for that. You see, if I don't use quotes, it prints out 10, but if I use quotes, it prints string, because it assigns x as string and prints that. We just assigned y as welcome to the city and printed it. We can't give all names to variables, like I just gave x and y to variables, and also I'm going to show you the valid and invalid types and when we get error. These four are valid variable names. For example, if we use underscore or we add numbers inside the variable name, or if we use capital letters, it's not a problem. But let's see the invalid. These three are the invalid types because at the first one we started with the number which is not valid in Python, and in the second one we use dot in front of our variable name. It's also not possible to say that in Python, and in the third one we just gave a space between the variable name, and you can do that in Python too. Let's cover the specified cases that in Python known. Camel cases, each word but not the first one starts with the capital. As you can see, I said variable name is 4 and all the starting letters are capital but not the first one. In a snake case, each word is separated with underscore. As you can see, I said variable name is 4, but there's underscores between every word. For the Pascal case, we start every word with capital letter, and instead of camel case, we are starting the first word as well. Welcome to the second lecture of variables. We can assign multiple variables in one line, like I just did. I assigned apple with red string, banana with yellow string, and cloud with white string, and they all assigned perfectly with just one line of code. We can also use equal sign to assign multiple variables with just one string or one number, like I just did. I just assigned dog, cat, fish, and bird with animal, and they are all assigned with 4 equal signs. I just showed that printing multiple variables together with plus sign or with separates, they both works, but one is with space and one is without space. We can print number and string together with plus sign because it raises an error, but if you print two numbers or two strings, it works fine, but if you try to fix it, it will raise an error. The only way is printing both of them together. I'm just going to show here. Printing them without plus sign. Welcome to the lecture on data types. We already saw strings, and I just assigned x as this is a string. If we use quotes, it's string. I just show the different versions of strings. Even if it's empty or it covers a number, if there's quotes, then that's a string. Now let's move into the numeric types with integers and floats. I just wrote number and assigned it as 5 and checked its type, it's integer, and I just wrote the number 2 also and I assigned it to 25, and when I check its type, it's integer also. If we add two integers together, the output type is also integer. And here's our floats, 1.5 and 10.5, and when we print their types, they are both floats, and let's add them, see the type of the addition. As we print, as you can see, the result is 12.0, but it's still float if we check its type. And let's mix it. Let's add float and integer together and check the result. By mixing them, we can see our result is float and the addition result is also float. Now we are going to see the sequence types, list and tuple, and we are going to see mapping type in the next lecture. They are all for covering multiple variables in just one, maybe list, tuple or dictionary. Let's cover them. For creating lists, we are going to use curly brackets, and for creating tuples, we are going to use round brackets. Here's the difference, and big note here, List objects are changeable, but tuple objects are not changeable. We just created a list of phones and we stored Samsung, Xiaomi, Apple and Nokia in it. And we are going to reach the first element, Samsung now. In Python, if you want to reach the first element, you need to start with 0 because all the countings start from 0 in Python. Let's check its example. I wrote the name of the list and added curly brackets and wrote 0 in it for reaching the first element, Samsung. I reached the first element and changed it Oppo, and when I print the phones, it's updated. Our first element is Oppo now. Samsung is gone and our new first element Oppo has come. I just created a tuple as fruits and its type is tuple, and when I print it, as you can see, it prints out 3 strings, apple, orange and watermelon. And let's see if we can change the elements of it. As you can see, an error raised, and you can see the type error here. Tuple object doesn't support item assignment, it says. Thanks for contributing to the lesson. Welcome to the second lecture of data types. We are going to move with mapping and boolean types in this lecture. It's going to be shorter than the first lecture. It just assigned apples with 5, its value is 5, and banana with 10, and watermelon with 20. And when I print, it prints the whole dictionary, and when we check its type, it's dictionary. As you can see, it raised error, and I just add the quotes for reaching the specified value, and it gives 5 for its value. Now here is the watermelon example, and now we can move into the Boolean type. Booleans are types that only take values of true or false. There are only two values for Booleans. Let's give an example with false also. As you can see, it's also a Boolean, and let's see why it's useful, because Booleans are a commonly used technique in Python. We are going to use a lot in data science or any subject. It's really important in all programming languages and also in Python. In Python, two equal signs means is equal to. We are going to see them in operators lecture, but we just ask that is b true with 5 is equal to 7, and it printed out false, and the type is Boolean, as you can see. Let's do one more example, but we are going to use another operator now. This time we used is not equal to operator. We asked is 5 not equal to 7, and we got the result of true, and its type is Boolean. Thanks for contributing to the lecture. Welcome to a lecture on lists and list operations. This lecture will be about lists. We create lists by brackets. Let's create a list for starting. I'm going to create a list with the name of apples and insert red, green and yellow into it. Let's see. We created our list. Let's print it and see the output. As we can see, we got the elements in our list. Let's reach to our elements. For example, let's reach red. We need to use 0 for the first index since we are coding in Python. We got the red by apples and 0 in brackets. Let's change the red with yellow. In this way, we will have 2 yellows in our list. Let's assign it. Now, by reaching it, we can see if it's changed or not. We can see that it is changed. Also, let's call our list again. We can see our list is updated. We can also store numeric types in lists. Let's create a list with name of random list and insert numeric values and strings in it. Let's print it and see how elements looks. As we can see, we stored multiple type of items in a single list. Let's see how we iterate over a list. We will use for loop for this task. Let's create a new list for this task. We created our list with the name of shopping list. Now let's print the elements for each element in the list. Let's create our for loop firstly. Here we printed all of our elements. Let's do another thing. Let's print we are going to buy another thing for each element in our list. As we can see, we printed it 4 times. Now we are going to create a variable with the name of count, and we are going to add 1 to it for every one element in our list. We are going to count how many things we are going to buy with this loop. Remember, equal and plus signs together, if you use them together, it adds the value we give to itself again. Let's say it. Now we store that inside count. Let's print it and see if it's worked. Yes, it has worked. We firstly assigned it at 0 and now it's 4. Let's use this with an f string. Using a f string will let us use a variable in a print function in strings. For example, if we add f just before string starts, in print function we can use count inside the string. Let's see an example and we can cover in that way. We can see it gave the output of the number of items that we are going to buy is 4. We just used count in our sentence. If you try to use this without an f string and plus sign, it won't work because we can't use multiple types with add of print function. Let's also see that one in action. As we can see, it didn't work. Thanks for contributing in this lecture, and see you in the next one. Welcome to a lecture on Python operators. We are going to cover arithmetic, assignment, comparison, and logical operators in this lecture. We are going to start by arithmetic operators. Let's see. You can see we use the specific arithmetic operators to do mathematical operations like 50 plus 25 is 75, 50 minus 25 is 25, and 50 multiplied by 25 is 1250, and if you divide 50 to 25, it's 2. It's the arithmetic operators. Let's move into assignment operators. You are already familiar with equal sign. We just assigned x as 5 and printed it. You know x is equal to 5, equation from the first lectures. This operator is plus and equal sign together works like x is equal to the x plus 3. You're going to see when we print and run the cell, it's going to print 8 because we are x is 5, we are adding 3 to x and assigning it as x again. Let's print then and see. As you see, it worked as I said, and it has also one version with minus, and let's see that. It worked as the same way. A is equal to 20 in the first row, and when I said a minus equal sign 15, it prints 5 because it used the operation of a is equal to the a minus 15. It's how it works. Now let's move into the comparison operators. We assign a as 5 and b as 3, and we are going to first the less than operator. It prints false because it prints a boolean. I need to remind you that one more time. A is greater than b, because of that it returns false. And here's the greater sign. We just printed 5 is bigger than 3 and it returned a boolean true. If you want to check two variables are equal, we can use two equal signs and it returns a boolean false because 5 is not equal to 3. This time it returns true because we just wrote the not equal operator. It checks for not equality, not for equality, for not equality. We can use greater or less sign with equal sign, because if you want to check greater than or equal, for example, if you want to check a is equal than, equal to, or more than 5, we can use these operators, and as you can see, it worked as the same as greater or less. And here's the logical operators. We are going to start with AND. AND means if the both statements are false or true, if the both statements are true, it returns true. As you can see in the first example, the both statements are 5 is greater than 3 and 8 is greater than 4, so it returned true. But in the second, 5 is not less than 3, because of that it returned false. Let's move into the OR. For the OR statement, we can say that it's our last operator of this lesson. If one of them is true or both of them is true, it returns true, but if none of them is true, then it will return false for the OR operator. Thanks for contributing in the lecture. Welcome to the string methods lecture. We are going to learn how to work with strings in Python. We create strings by double quotation marks. Let's create a string and assign it to a variable. Our string is stored inside variable 1, and when we print it, we can see our string. We can reach to our string elements with square brackets. For example, let's create another string with the name of test and see how we use square brackets on strings. We can see y is printed. If we want to take, for example, is great, we can use colon for this task. Let's see in action. What if we want to take is only? We are going to add a number for it after the colon. The numbers we add is the index numbers. Now only is shown, as we can see. Let's see the usage of for loops on strings. We can use loops on strings. Let's create another variable for this. And let's say for index in variable a, print index. We can see that all of its letters are printed one by one. We can say for index in variable a, print something, and Let's see the result. We can see that 1 is printed in the same amount of letter count in watermelon. We can use len function for checking the length of a string. Let's see it in action. We can see there is 11 characters in Unstoppable. We can get the length of a string with this function. Let's move to the check method. It's used for checking a specified word in text. It can be easy to see by eyes in small sentences, but think about an article. It will be hard to see by eyes. Let's see its usage. I need to change the page, I'm sorry, because it raised an error in the recording program. And we can see that it returns true because we have stock in our sentence. Our sentence was, I don't think that stock of X company will increase in price. And this in comment always returns booleans because you're asking a question, like you're checking it. Then see the opposite of this task and how it works. And nothing works like this. It also returns a boolean, and it didn't return false because we asked if clear is not in example 1. And this is all for this first lesson of text methods. See you in the next lecture. Welcome to the lecture on if statements. Let's see what if statements are. If statements work as if the specified condition, here it is A is greater than B, is true, then do this. But you need to after the condition you need to give 4 spaces. You can press tab, which is commonly used, or you can use spacebar for 4 times, and after that you can write what you want to happen. Like I said, if A is greater than the B, then print A is bigger. But in the second example I didn't give the space, because of that it raised an error. As you can see, we assigned age as 20, and if age is more than 18, we printed out you can enter. Or in the second example it didn't raise an error because there's nothing wrong. If age is less than 18, then it does nothing because it doesn't meet the condition. Here's a second keyword for if conditions. We said if age is more than 50, print you are a little bit old. Else means if condition doesn't require it, then do this. And we need to give spaces again. We said else print you are young, and it printed you are young. Let's do another example. Here we assign money as 30, and we said if money is more than or equal to the 30, you have money to eat at outside today, and else if condition doesn't require it, then print you don't have money to eat from McDonald's, and it prints out you have money to eat at outside today. Let's do one more example. We use and in this one. Age is equal to 20 and money is equal to the 50, and if age is more than 18 and money is more than 30, then you can enter the event. Then else print you can't enter. We wrote, and as you can see it printed out you can enter to the event. Welcome to the lecture on loops. In Python we are going to cover two loop types, while and for, in this lecture, and let's start with while. The while loops work like while a is bigger than 2 and we assign a as 5, print a is greater than 2 still, and we added a minus equal to 1 because if we don't add that, if it will be an infinite loop and it's going to be a problem. It's hard to close and I don't want to show that on the video, but you need to, if you are creating an infinite while loop, I'm going to show how it's done, but I'm not going to do that. You can use while, true and boolean for creating an infinite loop. It's useful sometimes, but generally we don't want that. It works like while a is bigger than 2, print a is greater than 2 still, and it prints out that for three times because there's 3 steps. A is equal to 5, prints 1 time, a is equal to 4, prints 1 time, a is equal to 3, prints 1 time, and then our loop is done. Let's do one more example. You see, this time it didn't printed anything because b is never going to be less than 5 in this scenario. You see b is equal to 10, and while loop doesn't work. Let's move into the for loops. We created a list of phones with Samsung, Xiaomi, Apple, Oppo and Nokia, and we wrote the for loop. It works like for index, or you can use any number or ladder here in phones, which is our list. We want to print index, and what it's going to do is going to move step by step, like it's going to start from phones Samsung, Xiaomi, Apple, Oppo and Nokia. It's going to happen 5 times. It's going to print all the phone names one by one. Let's see how it works. As you can see, it printed out all the phone names one by one. And now we are going to discover another function from Python, which is range, which is commonly used in the for loops. Let's see the example. Range function works like it creates a list from 1 to 30, but doesn't imply 30, and we just use them in a for loop for number in range 1 to 30, print number, and it worked like this. It printed all the numbers 1 to 30. Welcome to the last lecture of the Python fundamentals. We are going to discover functions in Python. We used functions like print or type. It's pre-built functions in the Python, but we are going to create our functions now. Let me show you. It's the true way for creating functions. I just use the word def, the short version of definition, and print my sentence, brackets, and then just like if for loops, I just gave for space. You can do it with tab, and I said print. You just code your function, and when I call it after, just like print or type, it returns my print. And now let me show you how to insert variables in a function and use it. We are going to use that a lot in our lectures. What I did here is I defined the function as add, and I passed in a and b variables, which I'm going to give when I'm calling the function, and I assigned c as a plus b, and I printed c. And let's see how it works. I'm going to do one more example with the multiplication. I forgot to run the cell. As you can see, you can call it whenever you want, whatever count you can want. And let's define another function as multiplication. We're going to do the same process. It works perfectly. As you can see, we defined our function multiplication and passed in t and z variables, and t and the z variables that we give, and we assigned y as the multiplication of them, and we printed out the y, and then we called our function 2 times with our numbers that we want, and it worked perfectly. It's the end of the Python fundamentals lecture. Thanks for contributing all of them if you contributed, and you can head over the other sections of the course now. Thanks a lot one more time. Welcome to a lecture on input function. In this lecture, we are going to learn how to take user input and use it. We will firstly start by learning how to store user input into variables. Taking the inputs from user is generally a really important concept. For example, you wrote your email and password when you are logging into your Udemy account. That is also an example of taking user input. Think it like you are taking entries and using them. Let's set a variable with the name of username and see the usage of input function. And now we can enter the username for storing that. Let's say we are going to give username as Python learner. And now let's see it in action. And now it's stored inside of username variable. Let's try to print it and see if it worked properly. As we can see, it worked perfectly. We took an input from user and used it. We generally want to specify the input with types. For example, if you are taking age from user, we will write int represents integer in front of it for setting the input as integer so we can work on it. Let's see that one in example. We set our line for taking the input for age. Let's print it and take its type to check if it's integer as we set. As we can see, it's an integer and it worked without errors. Now let's create an if statement for checking username to enter. Let's start by setting the true username. It's going to be a useful thing. And we're going to take the input as username. If username matches with true username, we will print you can enter to the system. Otherwise, we will print access denied. We will add str for taking user entry as string. Let's code it. Now we can try it. Let's try it with both true and false usernames. After that, I will tell you one by one how it works. It works perfectly. We firstly set a true username for checking the equality with the user input. Then we stored the user input in username and we wrote a if statement which firstly checks if username matches the true username and otherwise it will say access denied and you can't enter the system. This is all for input lecture. Thanks for contributing into this lecture and see you in the next one. Welcome to a lecture on random module. There's a lot of libraries and modules in Python that makes the language popular. We will use import keyword for both libraries and modules. I will show how to import the library or module in NumPy section again. Both random module and NumPy library is really important in Python. Most of the libraries built on top of NumPy. In that section, we will just cover that library. Also, it's a super easy thing. We are going to write import and then we will write the modules or library's name. Let's start the lecture by importing random module. That's all. That is all we need to do for importing random. The random module is a built-in module to generate a random variables. It can be used to perform some action randomly, such as to get a random number, selecting a random elements from a list, shuffle elements randomly in a list. Let's start discovering the features of random module. We will start by random integer. We will use the following line for it. Also, I will run it multiple times, so you will see it will change, which shows it gets selected randomly. We can see that we get random numbers every time. We use the module name and dot after it, and we wrote the method that we want to use after it. I wrote 1 and 20, which are both included. Both 1 and 20 can be output from this line of code. Let's discover the random choice method. I will create a list for this task. Yes, it's a completely random list. Now, with choice, we will pick a random element from our list. Let's see how choice works. I will run that line multiple times for showing you it is picked completely randomly. As we can see, it returns a random element from the list. Let's use it with an f string. Let's store the pick in a variable and create an f string with it like I'm going to buy and our random choice. Again, I will run that multiple times. It seems nice, right? Let's discover the shuffle method. I'm going to create a new list of numbers now. We're going to use shuffle for changing the order of our list. Let's see it. Again, I'm going to run the code more than one time. As we can see, order of our list is changed. That was all for this lecture. Thanks for contributing. See you in the next lecture.